All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining. This is a hybrid event, which we recently started doing again. Actually, it feels really good setting up Amatria again and doing something live casting here. Okay, we have a pretty nice streaming setup. So it is my great pleasure to welcome everybody to Amatria's 4th birthday party. I remember it like it was yesterday. And so I want to present the panelists of the day. Our first speaker, first panelist is going to be Kadi Bono. Kadi, of course, is a professor here in the School of Engineering. Kadi was instrumental in getting the sculpture here in the first place. So thank you so much, Kadi, also for organizing the birthday party today. Philip is online. Philip?
I think Philip is still having some trouble becoming a panelist.
Okay. We want to make sure that he can speak. Cooley, can you hear it? Cooley, could you maybe communicate with Philip to make sure?
No.
That would be great. Thank you. Philip, of course, being the architect who envisioned and built Amatria together with this amazing team over the course of about a month, 4 years ago. We also have Migi Torres, who's currently running interference and who prepared a beautiful composition for us that he's going to play live today, but also, of course, for everybody who's joining us via Zoom. Finally, myself, I'm Andy. I'm a research scientist here in Kadi's lab, and I just like Amatria. That's why I'm here. So a brief overview over the agenda. My welcome is almost over. Next up is going to be Philip for a little speech, provided we can get him to speak. And then Migi is going to play his music composition. I believe it's called Autopoietic Bloom. Beautiful. Then we're going to have a very brief review of Amatria's life. And then we're going to go downstairs for a circus performance by Zachary Herzig, a Cyr Wheel performance. I did not know that before. And then afterwards, at the end, we're going to have some delicious cake and fruit, which you probably can't see right now, but it's right there. All right, I think next up then is Philip. I'm going to go back to Philip's slide. I wonder if Philip can already speak.
I still might be having trouble. Dave's helping.
Okay, all right. Could we start with yours?
Sure, yeah. We can
all right, wonderful. Okay, so we're going to go forward to Migi's. Migi, do you want to say a few words?
Absolutely. Let me share my screen and then I'll stand up there.
Cool.
Zoom, share screen. Might need you to unshare so that I can share.
Yep.
Yeah. Great. Desktop. And then go to PowerPoint. Okay. Excellent. Maybe not working. It is. Do one of these. Okay, great. Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Kati and Andy, for setting us up, and Philip for being here. I am so excited to present to you guys Autopoietic Bloom, a project of mine that's been about a year in the making. This is a mood-based improvisation engine for sentient architecture systems. So let me give you a quick rundown of what it really is. It's essentially a suite of 24 improvisational schemes and custom software that I wrote for the real-time interpretation and performance of these schemes by compatible living architecture. In this case, it's Amatria. With Autopoietic Bloom, Amatria can compose and improvise and perform a musical work that is unique every single time. Each improvisation is a non-repeatable event, an expression of uniqueness of identity, and an opportunity for human connection. And the uniqueness of that aesthetic experience will sort of bind people in this really implicit way, which I think is really beautiful. So I want to give you a quick rundown of sort of the conceptual side of this piece, and then we'll talk a little bit about the technical stuff. So I was very much concerned with making something that was integrated with the same sort of ideas that were present already in the sculpture, as opposed to something that was sort of unrelated, that simply used 10 speakers. So I used as my point of departure many of the same questions that LASG has been investigating since their inception, such as, can architecture integrate living functions? Can future buildings think or care? And how do humans respond to these evolving interactions in a process of mutual adaptation? Well, I sort of took this in my own direction and began asking things like, can living architecture help people to create social or parasocial relationships with their environments? Can living architecture mediate social relationships among people? And then what role does sound play in that mediation? And how can people connect with each other through a shared sonic environment? So thinking about that, I began to develop some desiderata for this project. And since my goals were very artistic, all of the things that I was trying to accomplish were phenomenological in nature. In other words, they were all about the experience of listening and being present in this space, as opposed to, say, ontological ideas about you know, whether a machine can improvise music. That's very interesting, but really what I'm after is the impact, the emotional impact of everything. So the first thing was I wanted to create a musical experience that allows people to deepen their relationship with the architecture of Luddy Hall and with each other as mediated through Amatria. I wanted to create a musical experience that deepens the sense that Amatria is alive. I wanted to situate the observer and the sculpture in the same quote unquote sacred time and space. That number 3, I might gloss over a little bit just for the sake of time, but the idea is that when you're in the aesthetic experience, you feel like you're in the same world that you're walking into. I wanted something that had a life beyond a single performance. And then finally, I wanted something that was distinct enough from Amatria's normal sound design, where it wasn't sort of superseding it or subverting it in any way, but just something that would sort of complement its normal sound design. So time and space is a mediator of human relationships. Does anyone recognize this photo? Has anyone been here before? This is a place called The Slope at Cornell University. It was around 2016 or 2015 when I was walking along a sidewalk here and the sun was setting behind the hill. I didn't take this photo, but it was a similar thing to this photo. And I remember just sort of standing there and deciding I was just gonna watch the sunset for a while. And after a few minutes, I looked around and I noticed maybe half a dozen people had stopped walking and they were standing there as well. And when the sun set, we all went our separate ways. We didn't say anything to each other. We didn't know each other's names, but it was this really beautiful experience that connected us all in a very implicit way that I thought was very beautiful. So that's sort of the ethos that I was operating under when I tried to kind of address the first of those 5 desiderata there. Next, I want to talk a little bit about biomimesis through music. I was very much inspired by Amatria's behavior engine, which is the software that controls all of her lights and servos. Basically, the idea is that you can't really explicitly control individual lights and everything, but you can kind of parametrically define how the sculpture behaves. And so that idea of parametric, of defining things parametrically and then letting the sculpture kind of have these sort of emergent behaviors within those boundaries was something that I found very inspiring. I also wanted this to sort of personify Amatria. Oh, there he is. And give her the ability to have some agency in the music. So she decides what to sing and when to sing, as opposed to us kind of pushing a button and then having her sing. Of course, today we will be pushing a button, but generally speaking, we won't be. I wanted to center the musician, that is to say Amatria, as the composer. And especially, this was really important because for me, the sort of central idea that I ended up with was that the ability to create art implies life. The ability to create something or to make something creative helps to give the impression of life. And so that's where we get to the idea of autopoiesis. Many of you may have heard this term before. It's used a lot in cognitive science and in complex systems theory. But the idea is it comes from the Greek word auto, meaning self, and poiesis, creation. And it's essentially a way of defining a living system by talking about the way that it can reproduce and maintain itself by using its own components to create more of its own components. And so the metaphor here is that as Amatria gives life to music, the music then in turn creates an impression of life for Amatria. So there's that reflexive quality here. Finally, it's just some distinctions from the original sound design, which I think are important to point out. First one is that mainly what affects when she decides to sing and what she sings, it's affected by kind of a subjective variable called mood, which is essentially mainly tied to local weather data. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, as opposed to the acute sense data that you might get by looking at its sensors and stuff. The singing kind of occurs less frequently as normal sound design. And then the sounds are organized differently. There's a beginning and middle and end for the various pieces, as opposed to being something that can kind of exist without a beginning, middle, or end. And then finally, on a conceptual level, I sort of think about Autopoietic Bloom as Amatria singing, whereas her normal sounds are sort of her speaking. So her identity is sort of characterized by her normal sounds in the same way that our idiolects kind of are characterizations of our normal sounds. Whereas when you sing a song, you kind of put on a persona, you kind of put on a costume. And that's kind of the idea. It's a thing you are versus a thing you do. And I'm going to skip this last one for the sake of time. So now we can dive into sort of how it works, some sort of high level ideas about how it works. So two things that I really wanted to be sure that I was doing was, number one, I wanted to be able to think like a musician, and number two, I wanted it to be able to be flexible and extensible in case it ever wants to be integrated to any other system that Amatria has. I was really concerned with defining parameters, which then define the bounds for an improvisatory kind of practice that the machine can do on its own. So I decided to work with weather data as kind of the main mediator of those parameters. The reason that I used weather data is because I think that weather actually, even though we might not think about it this way, it actually profoundly affects people's mood all the time. And so this is kind of a way for Amatria to respond empathically to the community in Luddy Hall without having to sort of surveil you or get your biometric data in any weird way. So all the improvisations are predefined parametrically at a musically high level, which is sort of inspired by Amatria's behavior engine. And then she synthesizes those parameters to compose or improvise a unique piece of musical artistry. So these parameters can be defined by anyone, but only Amatria can really choose the individual notes and rhythms and transformations. So let's talk a little bit about the different software components. I'll point out a few salient features here. The first one I think is important is this weekly wake-sleep scheduler. This basically helps Amatria to decide, she can decide when to sing, but maybe you don't want her to sing when there's classes going on or something like that. So you can say, okay, from this time to this time on this day, be quiet. Or you can say on weekends, you can sing as loud as you want or whatever. And then the next thing that I'm going to talk about is this improvisation engine over here. I'll also just point out for those at home, Philip et al., the ambisonic spatializers, which are going to be used to listen to this music. It's essentially a way that Autopoietic Bloom can kind of simulate the acoustics of Luddy Hall and the specific locations of all the speakers and kind of mix it down for you in this virtual environment. So it'll be a little bit different than what we hear in person, but it's the same idea. So this whole thing was built and coded in Max using a couple of wonderful libraries that I'll talk a little bit about in a moment. This is a kind of schematic of the information flow. The most important modules are the ones sort of right here: Zoe, Donatoni, Syrinx, and Quincy. So these four form the real core of the improvisation engine. The idea being that Donatoni is the gesture generator. It's what creates all the raw note data. There's no sound yet, it's just data. That gets sent over to Syrinx, which turns that into sound. Then that gets sent through Quincy, which distributes those 4 voices out to the 10 speakers in different ways. And then finally, to kind of tie everything together, we have the breakpoint interpolator. So here is again the sort of 4-part structure of the modular improvisation engine. We'll talk first about the gesture note generator. This makes use of the Bach library for Max, which is just an incredible way of thinking about notes. It was written by Andrea Agostini and Daniele Ghisi, who are 2 incredible musicians and computer scientists. The real crown jewel is that you can represent musical data as list-like linked lists, which are essentially just nested arrays. And a nested array is a wonderful way of representing musical information because the way that we think about music is so hierarchical. You have measures, and then you have chords, you have notes. And so all these things can be represented through a nested array. And so what Donatoni does is it sort of manipulates these lists in real time and sends 4-voice MIDI data out to the synthesizers. It's just 4 voices. It could theoretically support up to 16, but we don't really need 16. There are only 10 speakers, and 4 worked for the Beatles, so it's good enough for me. Then Syrinx is the multi-channel synthesizer. We have 4 parametrically controlled synths, 1 for each Donatoni voice. Each voice supports up to 4 simultaneous control signals, so you can sort of shape sounds dynamically. You can add filter sweeps and things like that if you want to. And the real core of this is a synthesizer called Absinthe 5 by Native Instruments, it just makes things extremely flexible. Basically, instead of having to predefine every single parameter for every time you change instruments, you can essentially create the instrument in advance and then just load a preset, which makes it extremely easy in terms of information flow. Then we have Quincy, which is the dynamic mixer. Quincy distributes the signal from Syrinx to the 10 channels. And it does it in a way that can change over the course of the song. So one of the things you'll hear certain sounds changing where they come from. And so that was also an important part that I wanted to include. And it uses similar algorithms as the Donatoni module to manipulate speaker configurations as nested arrays and then decode them in real time. So when we think about this, we have Quincy, Syrinx, and Donatoni, which essentially is a sophisticated programmable wind chime. There isn't really anything compositional about it yet. And so to really turn wind chimes into a musical experience, to turn soundscape into narrative, to turn speaking into singing, recitative into aria, it needs something that can create a sense of transformation, a sense of musical intention. And so the solution to this is the Zoe module, which is essentially an interpolation engine, which allows you to essentially define what you want to have happen at the beginning of the song, what you want to have happen at the middle, and what you want to have happen at the end. And then Amatria can kind of seamlessly interpolate between all of those things and create a sense of drama, a sense of direction, a sense of transformation, a sense of autopoiesis. So all the parameters, there are 235 parameters at a time per breakpoint, can be interpolated over the length of the composition. So you can create music that has climaxes and nadirs and beginnings and middles and ends and crescendi, etc. And so the possible points that you can interpolate through are virtually endless, and it also can scale very easily. So if you have, say, a 3-minute song that you realize it actually should be a 10-minute song, you can change it to 10 minutes and it'll kind of stretch along with you. So that's basically a rundown. So some concluding remarks here before I give you the demonstrations. Just another thank you to everyone here, especially Philip and Matt and Rob, Bay and Michael for helping with sort of teaching me how the thing works, how the sculpture works. Big thank you to Kati and Anandi and Medina for putting this together. And a couple of extra thank yous for the folks who either helped me with some advice on the technical side of things or who simply just wrote some incredible software. Just some preparation for what you're going to hear. This is going to be the song that kind of corresponds with the rainfall weather pattern. So this form is, the form of this, I chose it specifically because it really showcases the improvisational process. The second voice that you're going to hear, which is going to sound sort of like a kalimba. It's like this percussive kind of instrument, very kind of playful sound. That voice, you'll note how it transforms over time, even though there's improvisation happening in all the voices, but the second voice especially shows a lot of transformation. And at home, if you're watching from home, you'll sort of hear this as an ambisonic experience. You'll also get the benefit of having a nice visualizer, so you can see what voice is coming out of what speaker. So with that, I will take this off and we can begin here.
Thank you so very much, Nikki. That was beautiful. So on that note, I see that we have Philip with us now. So Philip, I suggest that we go over to you now. Let me just give me a second to turn my speakers on.
Hello there, colleagues. I hope that you can hear me. Miggy, what an absolutely exquisite and beautiful birthday greeting for Amatria. It's hard to put into words just what respect and pleasure and sheer beauty that offered. I feel very, very grateful to you and really to everyone within the Amatria community. Colleagues, I can't see anyone on screen, and I'd be very grateful if somebody could go on camera just so I can make sure that I'm being heard right now. Would someone be able just to give me a thumbs up, or, oh, good, I'm so glad. Hello, everyone. Hey, I'm so glad to see you. I'm going to speak just for 8 or 9 minutes. Hey, lovely to see you all. And I'll share a screen right away. Well, actually, first of all, what I'm going to be doing is just sharing some of the work that we hope to be doing together in the future. And we've been making little things that are pleasurable coming out of Amatria's systems that can be shared. We've been making some things to wear, which I hope that you'll see on runway soon. We've been making some kits, and I hope to be able to share some of this material in order to be able to make things for summer camps and for children. And we've been doing some pretty strong work as well, and some really fine acoustics that might justify some of the exquisite work that Miggy has been doing, and I would absolutely love to conspire about getting some pretty extraordinary acoustics into the surroundings as well. I'm pretty happy about what's already there, but there's so much more that we could do together. Let me just share a little bit more. So I hope you can see my messy screen now. Actually, not my messy screen, my beautiful screen. There. This is a project that we share, which tries to achieve so many sensitive layers to the world and to who we are and what we share. It tries to replace fundamental, classical, hardened boundaries, the idea that we need to be isolated. And instead, it tries to see that a world could expand in a myriad of sensitive ways. Let me jump through a few things we've been doing that I hope we're going to be able to do together in the coming months and years. Making kits that can be shared, that allow the kind of geometries that make up Amatria to be shared easily. Making software. Matt Gorbat's extraordinary doctoral work right now is working on shareable software in which the kind of patterns that and the configurations that Amatria has can be played with directly. Here, I'm just going to show a little bit more of the dynamics in this. You can see that the geometry itself can be expanded and played with very robustly, and perhaps the tools and the configurations that Miggy has been sharing can be folded into this as well. I'm sure they can. We've also been working with cardboard kits and very sustainable, simple patterns that make it very easy to expand this kind of work. And that results then in student work. We've been working with coursework where enormously creative kind of setups can be discovered. This sometimes focuses on the geometry of the systems, and sometimes it layers in the tools as well. I'm really excited about some breakthroughs in the geometry systems because we've been working to reconcile periodic, static, rigidly repeating systems with aperiodic, drifting, constantly shifting systems. Here you can actually see a representation of that. On the left-hand side, you can see rigid, beautiful crystalline spheres. On the right-hand side, you can see a Penrose tessellation, which is one of the versions of aperiodic systems. That is, things that drift and that constantly change. And I'm rather excited about being able to inhabit rather directly the space in between those worlds. You can see that at work with some new projects we've been doing, such as an installation in the western part of France called Afru, a reef, and in little jewel-like elements as well, and in quite a bit more interwoven systems, which are generating this understanding in which the world moves from both drifting, unstable things into worlds of possibility. Within projection, we've been working on mapping so that we make shadows now with lights, and also are telling stories with as if somehow doppelgangers with their shadows breathing. And this results in the ability to also project some worlds. You can see some of the speakers, by the way, that I was so excited by in the Venice Biennale installation that happened just last year, expanding the kind of work from Amatria. And here's the film that was made out of the whole universe of parts that exist in Amatria and its surrounding work, and then that move into the sense of possibility, where there's a kind of space of creation and suffering and death and possibility and mourning and hope as well. A sense that we might be able to inhabit this whole space together. Finally, this material has been turned into some costumes and into some cloaks and vestments, and has been used to really play with the sense of who we are, the boundaries within our bodies ourselves. This is a wonderful collaboration celebrating Black Emancipation Month here in Toronto. And this expands the idea of the Mokojumbi, the elders in a Trinidadian carnival. I hope you can see the great earth spirits and the Mokojumbi, the powerful elder at the center, all enwreathed in the sense of the stars and the encircling geometry. So perhaps we could see Amatria and its related projects as a kind of an expansion of who we are, testing our limits, not in the sense of trying to claim our boundaries or project or make shells around ourselves, but rather somehow in that rather delicious sense that each of us is a bundle of biomes and is multiple boundaries and can share. And that kind of world is one that I hope will really offer some very, very strong optimism amidst times where we need hope. So I hope that gives you a sense of some rather strong work that's been done here in this community. And there's so much that we can do together. I feel very, very grateful to be with you today.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Philip, for gracing us with your presence here. It's also beautiful to see that you are actually out there in the world again, creating sculptures. You showed us something in France and something at BNL. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being with us today. Next up, we have an extremely brief review of images from Amatria's life, and then we're going to all go downstairs for a little circus performance. All right, so over the past 4 years, Amatria has had a lot of guests. I mean, of course, let's not beat around the bush. The COVID pandemic has not exactly been kind to Luddy Hall. We've not exactly had a huge amount of people in here. However, we have had the occasional tour over the past 2 years. And here are just a little bit of pictures since Amatria's inception. So this is probably my favorite Amatria picture from opening night. I hope you can see that over there. Shot right down there from the staircase. I don't think I've ever seen this many people in Luddy Hall. This was Amatria's first birthday in 2019. You can see I still have memories of how good that cake was. In July 2019, we had the Canadian team here. Last time that was really fun, seeing everybody again who had helped build Amatria in the first place. In summer 2019, Philip Beasley's team also installed a bunch of new hardware and software, just Amatria make run as smoothly as possible. The idea is that this would be a preparation for software updates farther on in the future. In December 2018, I went to Canada to join a workshop where we started designing that new software. It was really cool seeing it coming into existence. This is an event from April about the wearables and motion support. You can see the former First Lady of IU being also a pretty prominent guest here. This was probably the most intense tour. We had Governor Eric Holcomb come by for a tour of Luddy Hall, and I was asked to show Amatria, which I was happy to do. This one here was a tour for the Women's Colloquium of IU, and Medina actually. I don't know where she is right now, but yes. Okay. Then we have a big data science online program, and they do campus visits occasionally. And typically when they do, I get to show them Amatria. It's nice if you are in an online program and you get to your school for once and you have something like this. That's pretty amazing. This year was some visitors from the Eskenazi Art Museum. You can see that was very shortly before COVID. I think that was the last tour we gave. And then these are just a whole list of other school tours that we gave. We do have a lot of middle schools and high schools coming in. And of course, at the end of every school year, all of the seniors in high school line up here for prom pictures. Here, just some more pictures. This was my favorite tour ever. There was a bunch of middle schoolers and they asked really good questions, better questions than most of the adults, to be honest. This was Amatria's second birthday, which, as you might remember, had to be online. The third birthday also happened to be online, unfortunately. Now it feels really good that we're back in person again this year. And this was one of the first tours after Luddy Hall opened up again. That was last August for the IU Division of Student Affairs. And then this one was another one, also just, I think that was almost on the same day, very close anyway. New data science master's students. These were in person. Some of them are my students in my data visualization class now. This year is from the end of August at Makevention, where we typically have a little booth with a little bit of manual work for everybody. And of course, we have the First Thursdays festivals, and Medina would know more about those because she attends those. And yeah, you can see this was obviously when it was still warmer outside. Yeah, people just building little moths. This year was a tour we did in October for the Center of Excellence for Women in Technology. And this one was just 2 weeks ago with some people from the NIH that came here for a conference and some of our external collaborators as well. It was really fun giving a tour to those people as well. All right, with that said, I think that we should move on to the circus performance. And for that, we're gonna all move downstairs. Then we're gonna come back up for cake. Yes, yes, absolutely. So we're gonna see Zachary Herzig in the bottom of Luddy Hall. You can see Zachary is a circus artist. It is extremely impressive to me to be able to do that. I could not even get into that pose in the first place. So yeah, we are very excited to have his piece observable. I'm just going to read the description here. Is a wheel in motion only when human eyes can observe it? Can something continue to see every minuscule change? Amatria, a singular entity that can see all, will observe every minuscule change. Let's have a look. Thank you so much. That was fantastic.
While we are waiting, I can say a few words.
Sure.
So people are gathering for a group photo, Philip. I hope you got to see what we just experienced. It was marvelous, and I think a really nice example of how easy or how hard it can be to be with machines, with devices, with AI. And I hope that Amatria also does its trick to help us understand how to live with new devices, new tools, with AI, with automation, with robotics. So let's first have a group photo, but then I have a few more words to say.
Right. Are you good? We have to all speak together a little more.
So Amatria originally was created to have us live and learn in Luddy Hall with a sentient being, a sentient architecture, an AI that can dream with us, that can learn with us, that can be with us. And because of the pandemic, she was alone for almost 2 years, just here watching over Luddy Hall while we were working from home. Now we are finally back, which is wonderful. It's so nice to actually have real cake, to have real people, to have real performances, and to experience this space, which you couldn't do otherwise. If you would have 10 loudspeakers on Zoom, it just doesn't work. So you really need to be here. And I think many of us are craving for social connections. And hopefully it's not just the social connections to other people, but it's also connections to well, physical and artificial intelligence, such as Amatria. I think we absolutely must find a way to live with each other, but also to live with these new devices that we built for ourselves. And I really see them as like teenagers, which are growing up next to us. And very, very soon they will be way better in many of the jobs that exist out there. So Michael Gilman is not here right now. He's working on the future of learning and work. And in many, many cases, there are jobs which are not for humans anymore. They are only meant now for robots and for AI. And we will have to live in that world, and hopefully it's a nice world, it's a good future, a bright future that we want for ourselves and our children. And so Amatria is really here to help us understand how we want to live together with AI, together with robotics, together with automation, and how we best divvy up the work ultimately, and how we learn and thrive together on this planet. There's a growing worry that this AI and automation movement will just increase the digital divides. There will be people that know how to operate and program them, and then there will be people which have no way to ever interact in a meaningful way with AI. And so we have to find a way to equalize that plane and to equalize the level and the area in which we live together. And hopefully again, events like the one today, where we have engineers and artists and architects and information scientists, data scientists, all come together and work together and enjoy Amatria together and help her celebrate her 4th birthday. Also can help us all understand the values that these different powers bring to the table. And again, I think in the future, we will have way more AI come to the table, and they might not get cake, but they might get energy and oil and whatever else they want. But I really, really look forward to her 5th birthday. And I think we really, really have to invite some AIs. I think there's some really cool AIs out there, and we should just try to have them present and celebrate with us. I think it's really a matter of bringing everybody around this table and figure out some world and some future together that we actually all enjoy living. Thank you, Philip, for joining us from Toronto. I hope to see you soon in person, and either here or in Toronto. So thanks for joining us.
Kathy, thank you so much for those extraordinary words. I love the sense that we could invite many friendly AIs with us, as well as ones that we need to wrestle and debate with. Greetings to everyone there. I really love this community. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Wonderful, thanks everybody. This concludes the event almost on time. The buffet is now open, I think. Philip, have a wonderful day, wonderful week, and everybody online, thank you so much for joining. Have a nice week.
Okay.
Bye-bye.